I'm sure that many of our audience want to know what is your understanding of what is happening in Venezuela with the case of Maduro.
I think it's a multifaceted operation, both in the tactical and operational, that went down remarkably well. But it is a very fraught situation in terms of precedents that it set and in terms of what it might portend for the future, even outside those precedents. And let me just give you one example. Trump's, well, I'll give you more than one example. Trump's comments about Greenland, think about that for a moment. I have no doubt that he is probably going to act on them. Where is Greenland to the empire that is like Taiwan to China? And where is the bigger threat? And where is the more cause for doing what Trump is saying he's going to do with Greenland? That is, occupying Taiwan. He just set the precedent for that. He laid down the precedent for Xi Jinping to, by whatever means necessary, Taiwan. Because any fool, even an idiot, knows that Taiwan presents a bigger threat to China with its tacit alliance with the United States than Greenland presents to the United States. So he just laid that down for Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping could take Taiwan tomorrow morning, however he wants to do it, military exercise, special operation, just bringing pressure to bear on them that they could not resist. He could do it tomorrow morning. And what would we say? How could we say anything? So that's the first really horrible thing Trump has done. And Putin sort of alluded to this, as have other world leaders. This is an incredibly bad precedent to set. Not only does it take us back to the Athenian Empire, for example, where the justification for killing everyone on Milos, for example, was we can do it. You are weak, we are strong. That is the rule. Well, take a look at where Athens went with that being the rule. That is essentially what we're saying. And he's doubling and tripling down on it by talking about Greenland, by talking about Mexico, by talking about Colombia. It's insane what he's doing from in terms of we're not just destroying the so-called rules-based order, we're replacing it with chaos. Chaos determined by who's got the biggest military, the most strategic and aptitude in employing it, and the willingness to do all that. That's the precedent we have set. We have destroyed international law; it's gone. We have destroyed any writ the UN might have. It was becoming increasingly feckless anyway. Gaza did that, but Trump aided and abetted that process too. Without Biden and Trump, and now in particular without Trump and what we're doing right now, blessing this colonial takeover of Gaza and thinking about shipping them out somewhere. I know you've got an idea about that, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but I don't disagree with the methodology of doing it. This is all destroying everything that many people, and I had a conversation last night that was almost tear filled on some people's part. People who knew Eisenhower, people who knew Goodpaster, people who knew the people around Truman, not Truman necessarily. No, not a good word really was said for Harry Truman. I think that was sort of the blowback to his recognizing Israel. But these people were sincere when they talked about the UN Charter. They were sincere. Eisenhower, in particular, was sincere. He had seen the bloodshed, he had seen the destruction, he had seen the concentration camps. He knew that what World War II represented was the lowest point in human history. 100 million casualties, almost everyone in the world impacted in one way or another. Major countries virtually destroyed. 10, 15, 20 years and billions of dollars to build them back. He saw all that. They were serious about what they did in putting the United Nations together and in trying to come up with a framework for international relations that would work without this constant war and without world war in particular, and of course, without what the new technology had brought nuclear weapons. And they were serious. And we agreed. The seriousness left with Bill Clinton. And every president of the empire since has done more and more to destroy that post World War II feeling and certainly that post World War II international structure. And we've done it piratically as pirates. We have done it cynically. We have done it in the world's face. We have let everybody know what we're doing, and we don't give a damn. This is as crass a reversal of 70 plus years of reasonable success in managing humanity's plight on this planet as anything could be other than a nuclear war. And Nima, we are headed for that.
Larry, you know that today we had at the UN people were talking about the situation with the case of Venezuela. And here is what Marco Rubio said. It's not, it wasn't at the UN, but he mentioned this situation with Venezuela.
In your question. Number one, Venezuela is a major source. And the reason why is the following. And I've seen a lot of this reporting, and it's fake reporting, and I'll tell you why. It says that somehow Venezuela is not involved in the drug trade because the UN says they're not involved in the drug. I don't care what the UN says. The UN doesn't know what they're talking about. Maduro is indicted by a grand jury in the Southern District of New York. That means the Southern District of New York presented the evidence to a grand jury, and a grand jury indicted him. And then a superseding indictment came out that was unsealed about a year and a half ago that specifically detailed Maduro's actions. So number one, let there be no doubt, Nicolas Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker in the United States, and he's a fugitive of American justice.
He's simply saying the way that he's talking about, he's simply saying if someone is indicted in, let's assume in China by a grand jury, and they can capture it.
Yeah, if they're indicted in the United States, they're guilty. By God, they're guilty. And Marco knows it. They're guilty. That's the most ridiculous argument I've heard, but that's not the most ridiculous presentation by him in the last 48 hours. I saw one that was just mind-bogglingly stupid. He couldn't even finish his sentences before he got to another one and another thought. He was just stumbling all over the place. He doesn't know how to explain what's happening. And let's back up for a second. One of the reasons he doesn't know is he's got two hats. He's a national security advisor, and therefore he's supposed to be in there policing and disciplining the decisions like this one that are made. And he's a Secretary of State and the would-be proconsul of Venezuela. I wouldn't want to be him right now. He is trapped in so many different ways that he can't speak intelligibly. And that was an example of it, although that was a little bit more intelligible than what I heard earlier today. It just was all over the place. That's what happens when you have no process. You have Trump. That's really what's happening here in the decision-making process of the United States of America. It is not in accordance with the 1948 Act. It's not in accordance with the evolutions of that process over the 60, 70 years since. It's not in accordance with anything but Trump's mouth. And the unfortunate thing is that people like Rubio and Hegseth and Noem and Bondi and Patel, they just echo whatever Trump tells them to echo, whether it's the Epstein case, which is getting well out of hand now for Trump. And you have to put that down as one of the reasons he did this. One of the reasons, just like Bill Clinton bombed Serbia for 78 days to get the people's attention off Monica Lewinsky, Trump is doing this partly to get Americans, and particularly MAGA, off this business of Epstein, because he's got problems even within MAGA for that. And he's also using it to get his MAGA people who are falling away from Israel's attention away from that and away from the Kirk assassination and everything. So there's all kinds of reasons Trump, who is really an astute, evil politician, is doing this. Besides the oil and the other things that we clearly know are the fundamental reasons we're doing it. it's all come together for him, and he's got sycophants to go along with everything he does, including a guy who is acting as both national security advisor, the person who's supposed to tell him. It's his job to tell him when he's really screwing up. Instead, Rubio tries incoherently, as it were, to reinforce what he's done. And Rubio knows better. Of all the people in the administration, I may loathe Marco Rubio, and I do because of his position with regard to Cuba, an island to which he has never been. I've been there at least 13 times. He's never been there. And he talks about it all the time. Shut your mouth, Marco. You've never been there. But he at least has a brain. He's the one member of the administration who has a brain, which is why Tucker Carlson told, don't make him vice president because they'll want to get to him. He's got a brain, but it's an evil brain. But he's not doing anything in his other role, the national security advisor role, except acting as a sycophant and a sounding board for Trump. That's the most important job that the Congress created post World War II. And it wasn't really even congressionally created. It flowed out of the 1947 National Security Act. It's not even named in the act. And Dwight Eisenhower was smart enough to realize that the Congress, in passing that act, essentially, had left something out. And that something was what he started to build. It was Andy Goodpaster. It was others that worked for Eisenhower. But by the time we get to Kennedy, and by the time we get beyond Kennedy, we've got a person in that position, unelected, not subject to the advice and consent of the Senate. So the Congress was a little bit antsy about it. But it's turned out to be, if it's a Brent Scowcroft, a good national security advisor, a real salvation for the decision-making process, because there's somebody there who has the credentials and the blessing of the president to tell him when he's naked and standing in the rain. Now, Ronald Reagan knew that and had 6 of them, so none of them could ever build up enough power. Well, Trump has done one on Reagan. He doesn't have one. He has a masquerading Secretary of State as a national security advisor. So the whole decision-making process is a disaster.
Marco Rubio says that this situation in Venezuela is different from what has happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya.
Because we aren't there in force. That's the only way it's different.
Today, China said at the UN that the United States is repeating crimes of Iraq, Libya, and Iran, invading sovereign states, fueling instability, and devastating civilians. And Donald Trump is not going to back down. He's talking about, as you've mentioned, he's talking about Colombia, Cuba.
You know who could do a real service for the world right now? She won't, but I wish she would, because she's unscrupulous as hell. That's the vice president now sworn in as president. She should pick up the phone and call Donald Trump. I'm no doubt he'll come on the other end and tell him, I'm the duly constituted, sworn in, constitutional president of the Simón Bolívar Republic of Venezuela, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. I'm the president. Not Maduro, you got him in jail. I'm the president. Don't tell me what I'm going to do. And hang up the phone. And see what he does. Or even better, end the conversation with, don't tell me what I'm going to do. You better get ready to snatch me. You ready to snatch me? And hang up the phone. That's what she should do. What would Donald Trump do? He would be in a trick bag par excellence. Do I mount another military operation? This time, do I really invade? This time, do I leave forces in the country? I mean, what choice does he have if she stands up and says, I'm the duly appointed, elected, constitutional, whatever they say in Venezuela, president of my state now, shut your mouth or come snatch me? What the hell would he do?
Yeah. But Larry, the people in Latin America.
he doesn't possess anything right now. He doesn't own anything in Venezuela. Maybe he's got some residual CIA and others in the country, but they don't own anything. They can't possess anything. They can't occupy anything. They can't pump any oil. And you know what else she could do? And I'll rest you assured she could do this. She could go to the CEO of Chevron and say, now, I've told that bastard in Washington what I think of him and what he did, but I'm ready to let you back in under conditions we'll sit down and talk about and agree to rehab the infrastructure of our oil process. You will be the first multinational. If you want others in, we'll consider that. Exxon, Royal Dutch Shell, whomever, we'll consider them. But they've all got to agree to what we agree to, which is what Donald Trump has talked about and is about his intent on doing it as I am on walking out and blowing my brains out, sharing the wealth with Venezuelans. Has to be a new deal. It has to be you make your profits, but the majority of the profits go to the people who own the oil. And the people who own the oil are not the United States of America. They're the Venezuelan citizens. They own the oil. She could make a real hero of herself, both with her own people and with the world oil community. Because let me tell you, these multinationals, if she gave them the legal process to do what I've just roughly described, they would be right there with her, because they don't give a damn about national capitals. They just want the market and the money and play on that. She could do this if she really was convinced and courageous about what she wants to do. But what I've heard about her is not good. So I just, but I wish there was someone in there like that. I wish there was someone who would do that, because what's he going to do? Defy him. What's he going to do? Invade your country? Well, if that happens, you got him by the short hairs. Because it's another Vietnam. A lot of people are going to die. That'd be tragic, but I'd be willing to take the chance just to turn the fortunes around and to undo this precedent that he's set almost as swiftly as he said it.
Larry, how did you find the reaction from Russia and China?
From the real people there, like Putin and Lavrov, carefully considered, muted. I think we have now put the final card on the table for Putin. I think he understands completely now. And he was a difficult person to convince of this, but I'm convinced he is now, that we are untrustworthy, deceitful, not worth listening to, not worth dealing with. That doesn't mean that he won't go ahead and, if we accept it, of course, force a deal on Ukraine, but it will be to his total desires. It won't be to any of ours. And it also means that he's going to go ahead with his response to this business of trying to kill him. Now, we've had some arguments in the group I talk with a lot. Will he go outside Ukraine or will he go in Ukraine? And some, like Doug McGregor and others, believe inside Ukraine. And there are others who think it might be to England, or it might be to Poland, or it might be to some other country, just so he can make his point that NATO is now considered the enemy. And I kind of was convinced by those who were arguing about it might be inside Ukraine, because here's what they said: a bevy of Oreshniks on top of the 40 to 50 CIA MI6 people who are in the country, kill them all. That makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't go outside Ukraine's borders. So Putin gets his revenge, if you will, and he gets it against the right target, especially if MI6 is there, because I'm hearing more and more that MI6 was really in the center of that. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't expand it into NATO proper. Because when you expand it into NATO proper, you do have, as one person pointed out, you do have Article 5 to consider. It is an attack on one is an attack on all. Even if it's Estonia, Latvia, Poland, whatever, it's an attack on NATO. When I heard that argument and listened to it, I said, yeah, that's probably more likely what Putin will do. He'll hit some NATO asset, clearly a NATO asset, and clearly connected with the drone strike that was probably intended to kill him. And he'll do it devastatingly.